Imagine it's the year 1143. You are not a lord, not a knight, by a novice, just arrived at the gates of a Benedictine monastery in the damp hills of Normandy. You are 16 years old, maybe younger. Your hair has been shaved into a tonsure, a bald patch at the top, framed by a fringe like a living crown of humility. Your family, though modest, scraped together a donation to get you placed here. They hope it brings salvation for you, for them. But no one prepared you for the cold. Your cell is stone, not metaphorically. It is literally stone. 3 walls, a low ceiling, and a wooden door with a small slit for light. Prayer. There's a straw mattress on a wooden board, a wool blanket. No fire burns in your room. Monastic vows discourage comfort. So, each morning, you wake shivering. Long before the sun, the bell rings in the dark pro. It is the Matins bell, calling you to prayer. The first of many. You rise, you dress, slowly, stiffly. The cold wraps around your ankles like a wet rope. You don't speak. No one does. Silence is sacred. Fish, your day is divided into hours, not clock hours, but canonical hours. 7 times a day, the bell will ring, and you will stop whatever you're redoing, even sleeping, to walk to the chapel and chant. Begins before dawn. Matins, then lauds, prime, terths, sext, none, vespers, and finally each service might last an hour or more. You stand, you kneel, you chant in Latin. Your knees ache, your back stiffens. The cold seeps up through the flagstones. This is not meant to be pleasant. It is meant to humble the body so that the soul may rise. When you are not in the chapel, you are working. Some days, that means the scriptorium, a large echoing hall where monks sit at wooden desks, copying texts by hand, painstakingly, carefully, letter by letter. The ink is cold. The quill stabs at your fingers. The candles flicker. You mustn't smudge a line. Parchment is precious. You might copy scripture, or a saint's life, or a herbal manual full of strange plants and stranger cures. But sometimes it's just lists. Lists of tithes, of debts, of sheep. Other days you are in the fields. The monastery has land, often a great deal of it, and someone must tend it. You might be digging, planting, or gathering herbs for the infirmary. Sometimes you weed the gardens in silence for hours, hearing only birds and your own breath. And always the bell rings. Meals come twice a day, and they are not joyous affairs. You eat boiled vegetables, barley gruel, hard bread soaked in broth. Meat is rare, forbidden in many orders. Fish is allowed, but not daily. Wine is watered down, more ritual than relief. You sit at long tables while another monk reads aloud from scripture. You don't speak. You chew. You listen. If you were hoping for comfort, and yet there is something steady about it. The rhythm of life. The order. The predictability. No surprises. No shouting. No violence. Only the bell. Only the chants. Only the quiet scraping of sandals on cold stone. At night, you return to your cell. You whisper a final prayer and sleep. Not soundly, but deeply. Because tomorrow you'll rise again. Before the sun. Before the birds. Before anything but the bell. Imagine now that you are not a monk, but a woman. A girl, really. Just 8 years old, and already promised to the church. It is the early 12th century, in the Rhineland, a land of rivers, castles, and thick pine forests. Your name is Hill, and your family, like many minor nobles of the time, Bess decided that one of their daughters should be offered to God. You are not given a choice. You are enclosed, literally, with another woman, an anchoress named Jutta, in a small stone chamber attached to the Benedictine monastery of You will not leave this space for years. You will learn to pray, to read, to keep silent. The walls are thick. The world outside becomes a memory. And yet, your mind begins to bloom. From an early age, you experience visions, strange, luminous images, bright lights, shapes, voices too. Not loud, but firm, like distant bells underwater. You try to explain them to Jutta. She listens kindly, but cautiously. Visions are complicated things in the medieval church. They can be seen as signs of holiness or of heresy. So for years you say nothing to anyone else. You continue your prayers. You grow, fused. You become a nun. Decades pass. Jutta dies. You are appointed magistra, head of the small community of nuns. By now, your visions have never left you. They press against your mind like tides. And finally, you are no longer able or willing to stay silent. You begin to write them down. Yours. First work is called Civias. Know the ways of God. It is a sprawling account of divine visions, theology, creation, sin, and redemption. But, unlike other texts, it is accompanied by rich, symbolic illustration, strange and vivid. A cosmic egg, a mandala of light, a tower representing virtues, a giant woman representing the soul. It is unlike anything your fellow monks or your superiors be, and yet you are not condemned. Pray. The Archbishop reads your work and declares it inspired. Even the Pope sends encouragement. It is as though, through obedience, you have gained the freedom to speak. But you do more than write. You compose music, chants, and hymns, unlike the plain Gregorian melodies common in monasteries. Your music is soaring, full of wide intervals and mysterious phrases. It feels otherworldly, like the visions themselves. You also write about herbs, stones, medicine. You describe the warming properties of fennel, the cooling nature of lettuce. You write of the human body as a delicate balance of heat and cold. Moisture and dryness are influenced by food, weather, and spirit. You even preach, rare, perhaps even scandalous. For a woman, you write letters to bescold bishops for corruption. You warn of complacency in the church. And though you never leave your monastic vocation, you are no longer cloistered in voice or thought. In one of your final acts, in your 80s, you bury a nobleman in your abbey's cemetery, a man excommunicated by the church. You are ordered to dig him up. You refuse. The church places your entire community under interdict. No sacraments, no singing. But you wait them out. You argue your case in letters, calmly but firmly. Eventually, the ban is lifted. Peace, you die. In 1179, in your late 80s, a remarkable age for the time, your visions are preserved. Your music continues to be sung. Your life, lived within the strict framework of obedience, somehow became a quiet revolution, not through war or protest, but through words, through persistence, and through the quiet confidence of faith turned inward and then outward again. As we leave Hildegard behind, we'll now descend into the kitchens and larders of the monastery. Not the grand kitchens of kings, but those hidden behind stone walls, filled with iron pots and bitter herbs. Segment 4. Abbey life. For the rich and powerful. The monastery was meant to be a place of humility, a world apart from the temptations of wealth and prestige. But, as with all human institutions, ideals and reality did not always align. Imagine now that you are not a novice, nor a monk of simple means, but the third son of a nobleman, too far from inheritance to matter in politics, but still far too noble to work the fields. Your family makes the expected decision. You are sent to the monastery by not just any monastery. Your father has influence. He writes letters. He donates land. And so, when you arrive at the abbey gates, you are not treated as a pauper seeking divine guidance, but as a guest of privilege. In the early and high Middle Ages, monastic institutions held vast wealth. Some abbeys controlled entire villages. Others produced wine, cheese, even manuscripts sold for handsome sums. And many were supported by noble families who saw the church not only as a spiritual refuge, but as a powerful social and political network. Thus emerged a distinct class within the cloister, the elite monk. Your cell, if it could be called that, is not cut from bare stone. It is paneled in wood. A feather mattress lies atop your bed. You are given finer robes, soft linen undergarments, and extra candles for reading after. Your food, too, is better. Where the lay brothers eat boiled beans and cabbage, you may be served river trout, eggs, honeyed, and should you fall ill, your remedies come not from the herb garden, but from imported apothecaries. Rare spices, dried figs, even wine from southern land. Some abbots lived nearly as comfortably as secular lords. In larger monasteries, especially under the Cluniac and Cistercian reforms, abbots ruled over hundreds of monks and vast properties. They dined in private rooms. They received guests of rank or dukes, bishops, even royalty, in great halls with carved beams and woven tapestry. Fine. Their robes might be trimmed with fine wool, their books bound in leather, inked with rare pigments. Some were spiritual men. Others were skilled administrators, politicians in all but name. Even among the nuns, distinctions were present. Bren, a convent, the daughter of a noble family, might bring a dowry. Bess ensured her a warmer cell, better food, more books, and sometimes even a personal servant within the enclosure. Another nun, often from a lower class background. Reeves women were not permitted to leave, of course, but within the walls, a quiet hierarchy prevailed. Some prayed in choir, others cleaned the latrines. One wore a gilded crucifix. Another scrubbed the floor beneath it. Of course, none of this was spoken aloud. It was understood. Part of the rhythm of monastic life, as unchanging and silent as the stone walls. Privileges were exercised discreetly. Indulgences granted under the pretext of health or age or devotion. And yet, in a world where status was everything, even a monastery could not escape the long shadow of birth and family name. To be fair, not all abbots relished comfort. Some gave away their wealth. Some insisted on hard labor, simple food, and total equality. But more often, especially in later centuries, abbeys became complex ecosystems of power and piety, austerity, and indulgence. Pilgrims might sleep on straw in the outer court, while noble-born canons drank sweet wine beneath painted ceiling. And so, even behind monastery walls, the world outside crept in. Fine fabrics, in the silver plates brought out on feast days, in the whispered letters from powerful patrons. It was, as ever, a matter of balance, holiness and hierarchy, poverty and privilege, prayer and politics, all under the same vaulted roof. As we now leave the cloister and return to the stillness of the present, let's gently reflect on all that we've seen. Up next is the conclusion, where we'll draw the threads of this monastic journey together. When you're ready, type continue to hear the closing reflections. Demandera. The monastery is quiet. The sun has risen, but still hangs low in the sky. Outside, mist clings to the garden paths, and inside the cloister kitchens, the day begins. Not with fire yet, but with the slow rustle of cloth, the soft clink of pottery, and the dull thud of root vegetables dropped into a wooden pail. You are in the monastic kitchen. It is not a place of rich aromas or sizzling pans. There is no rush, no shouting of orders, no flamboyant chefs, only quiet preparation, careful, reverent, and governed by rules older than anyone here. Monks in the Middle Ages were expected to cook, but not to indulge. The rule of Saint Benedict, written centuries earlier, prescribed moderation and restraint in all things, including food. Meals were not for pleasure, but for nourishment and humility. And above all, simplicity. Bet said monasteries were places of learning, and hidden within their libraries and storerooms grow recipes, carefully recorded, sometimes coded, sometimes vague. These weren't cookbooks as we know them. They were more like collections of culinary wisdom, notes on food, preservation, herbal mixtures, fasting substitutions, and medicinal broths, and within them, clues to a strange, forgotten cuisine. Let us begin with pottage, the cornerstone of monastic meals. A thick porridge, like stew made from grains, often barley or oats, and whatever vegetables were available: leeks, onions, cabbage, carrots, when in season, turnips, always turnip, all boiled together over a slow fire until soft and mild. Salt was used sparingly, and herbs like sage or parsley added only if available from the cloister garden. Sometimes, for feast days, a few lentils might be stirred in, or even a poached egg on top. It was not exciting, but it was warm, filling, dependable. Then there were fish dishes, the rare luxuries of the monastic calendar. Since meat was forbidden in many monastic orders, especially for the monks themselves, fish became a culinary exception. And the more inventive cooks found ways to prepare the stockfish, a kind of dried, preserved cod, was soaked for hours, then boiled until tender, served with a mustard sauce or vinegar, if such luxuries were permitted. Eel was also common in certain regions, long, bony, and oily, often baked in pies or roasted whole. In inland monasteries, pond carp might be raised specifically for Lent. They were considered cold in nature, fitting for fasting. Monks also developed complex fasting substitutes, especially for days of strict abstinence. Butter and lard were often forbidden, so almond milk became the fat of choice, made by grinding almonds with water and straining the result into a pale, creamy liquid. It was used in sauces, soups, even puddings. Some records speak of pea flour pancakes made with almond milk, fried on feast days. In Cluniac monasteries, wealthier and more elaborate, records mention cheese, tarts made with soft curd cheese, herbs, and thin sheets of dough, technically within the rules, by certainly edging toward indulgence. But some of the most fascinating discoveries come from medical recipes, foods prepared not for taste, but for healing. Brew, a broth made from fennel root and leeks, simmered gently and drunk warm, was believed to ease stomach discomfort. By a paste of crushed garlic and honey might be spread on bread for those with chills, and in certain Benedictine houses, They prepared a kind of herbal wine, steeped with rosemary, sage, and hyssop, taken in small doses by the elderly monks before bed. There were also strange, almost alchemical preparations. Powdered, crushed oyster shell for digi, sweet cakes made with rose water and ginger, meant to cool the heat of the liver. Even a vinegar infusion of wild thyme and nettles to ward off illness in winter. What's remarkable is not the flavor of these dishes, but their intentionality. Every ingredient had meaning. Every preparation had purpose. Pool was not for entertainment. It was part of devotion. To eat simply was to humble the body. To cook for others was to serve both God and community. To heal with herbs and teas was to honor the balance of nature. And in the quiet of the cloister kitchens, between the boiling pots and the candlelit mortar and pestle, monks practiced not just culinary care, but a kind of quiet, edible theology. Now we leave the kitchens behind and climb the stone steps to the abbot's quarters, because not everyone in the monastery lived quite so simply.